Monday. Already? Can you believe it? Well, one good thing, it means KBS is back and we are live. What a Monday it is. It's the Great Conjunction. Are you feeling it yet? Are you catching it? I'll be with you in about 2 seconds. Wait for me. I'll be right there. Yeah, see, I'm here. Almost. Give me 1 more minute, folks. I need to tweet this out. There we go. We're back. We're live. It's Christmas week. Hope you're full of the festive cheer. I hope. Great to be back again. Good show last night with Bill Bean and Travis. I'll be uploading that to Bill's channel later on. He changed his password, so I couldn't get into his account. So that'll be uploaded later on, folks, if you missed it. I urge you all to check that one out. And that was the end of 1 week. And today we start another one. And with it being Christmas week, we're going to try and raise the bar just a little. And today I had the weirdest little dive down the research hole, just to look for topics that we could maybe talk about, maybe today, maybe on future shows. And I ended up on a little stream of following the links. And wow, I tell you, I dug up some really cool stuff. It connects to the Great Conjunction that's going on today. And from there, I'm going to take you on the same synchronistic journey that I went on that leads to an AI that's predicting the future from the Great Conjunction. I know, right? But it's how we roll here on the Kev Baker Show. I'm hoping this is going to be something completely different and something that's quite enjoyable, quite fun, not too divisive. It's Christmas week. We're chilling out. You know, Ben Emlyn Jones is going to be my special guest later on today in just over an hour's time on the main show, and he is going to deliver the Christmas Ben Files, or as we prefer to call them, the X Files. Now, I have no idea where that crazy music came from, so we can get rid of that pretty quickly, right? Now, first in the chat today, was King Sweet. Yes, big shout out to King. And we had Saint Marionette, Brian. And we also got in here Polly, Jessica. Good to see you. Now, Jessica, I'm going to look really silly here. I'm probably going to make myself look my age, really old, but I noticed that over in Discord as well. What's the U all about? Please tell me, because it's intriguing me. It is. We've got Renzo in there, Polly, Jessica again, Renzo, Jessica, King, Jessica, Renzo, Polly, War. Good to see you. Bernaise sauce. We need our Bernaise sauce. Yes. What does Bernaise sauce taste like? Does it taste like whatever you want it to taste like? Because Bernaise knows just what you like. Is that what we're talking about? Bet you it is. So listen, we're gonna get going. We've only got an hour or so before Ben arrives on the scene, and Ben's been out. He's been participating in a little bit of the Great Conjunction today. So if I bring you over here to this place, and we come over here, Kev Baker Show channel. Now, being Christmas week, if you would like to become a member of the Kev Baker Show channel, I would love to say I've got some kind of crazy cool Christmas offer on, but I don't. So listen, now's as good a time as any, right? Reach out, join the channel, help support the madness that I continue to bring you here on a daily basis. And now listen, it's where we all hang out on a Sunday in the members only zone. And it's where literally yesterday I got a copyright strike from Jesus Christ because of some of the content we were playing. And if you're a member on the channel, you'll be able to cast your mind back and think, all right, I remember us looking at that. You got a copyright claim for that? Yes, we did. I even joked about it at the time, remember? I said, I better not play all of this just in case the big man whacks me. Whack. He whacked me. Totally whack-a-moled me. So tonight on the main show, we have got Ben Emlyn Jones. He is going to be with us. Let me just check this here. Well, that's really good because that's Ben messaging me right now. And the reason I wanted Ben to message me is before we go on the dive that I took today and the synchronistic journey through a couple of links into predictive AI, good stuff, we're going to take a look at what Ben's been doing in relation to the Great Conjunction. Yes, indeedy. So over here, we've got his channel. Let me just check this. Hang on, I'll play this here. Now, I have permission from Ben to play a couple of moments of him going outside to try and catch the Great Conjunction.
I'm dreaming of a wet
Christmas.
Christmas.
Ben's singing away, man. Loving it. Loving
Just like the ones we've never known. Where aircraft spray.
Oh!
And temperatures stay in double figures with snow.
Let's see if we can find it. Here we go.
The ones I actually concocted the title shot from this. What you see before you, the dot at the top left, you can see it's not quite a dot. It's actually it's like a sphere with some rings around it.
Wow.
That's the planet Saturn. On the bottom right, you'll see another slightly bigger dot with some other smaller dots around it. There should be four small dots. That's actually Jupiter and its 4 major moons. There are actually many more moons. There's several hundred, which are too small to see unless you've got a much better telescope.
So, bearing in mind that even the algorithm can slap you down, and I'm sure Ben wouldn't hit us with any copyright, I urge you all to go and check out Ben's video. I'd love for you to subscribe to his channel. I'm going to drop it in the chat room. Show another content creator, another lover of the woo, and Ben Emlyn Jones. I tell you what, he is most definitely a lover of the woo, right? He brings some of the best woo to the show. In fact, let me just link the big man in here. There we go. Yes, I've linked that in. I've given Ben a little link to the show. But yeah, the Great Conjunction. Now, we've been talking about it on here for a little while since I became aware of what was going on. And it really only started to sink in with me when we spoke with Mary Dacina. Remember when Mary came on and she called it the Great Mutation? And that started turning my attention towards, well, what is this thing that's going on in the sky? So just for people out there who might be totally new to what's going on here with the Great Conjunction, I'm just going to read out basically what it's all about, okay? It says, and this is from a NASA website, and then I'm going to take you on the journey that this took me on today myself. It's a weird one. So the Great Conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, we've read this before, but it's just to recap for anyone who might be new to this. Sky watchers are in for an end-of-year treat. What has become known popularly as the Christmas star is an especially vibrant planetary conjunction easily visible in the evening sky over the next 2 weeks as the bright planets Jupiter and Saturn come together, culminating on the night of December 21st. Now, in 1610, long time ago, Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei pointed his telescope to the night sky, discovering the 4 moons of Jupiter, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. In the same year, Galileo also discovered a strange oval surrounding Saturn, which later observations determined to be its rings. Now, these discoveries changed how people understood the far reaches of our solar system. And 13 years after that, 1623, cast your past lives back there. Regress yourself. Boom. Instantly. What were you doing in 1623? Wouldn't it be cool to find out? Like, if we can... I do think we've got past lives. I think that. What were we doing back then? Were we here back then, maybe? Do you think we remembered this from the last time round? Now, that's just speculation island stuff, right? The 2 solar systems, giant planets, Jupiter and Saturn, travelled together across the sky. They were holding hands. Jupiter caught up to and passed Saturn in an astronomical event known as the Great Conjunction, or as I prefer to call it, the Great Mutation, because that was kind of cool when Mary said that. So today, knowing that that was on the order of play, been looking forward to the 21st. And I want to give a big shout out to Chris and Cherie Geo. They're going to be participating in something pretty miraculous today. They're going to be going and spending the night in the Trump Tower, from what I'm led to believe. And this is a continuation of something they've been doing for a number of years now on multiple dimensions. And if you don't know what I'm talking about there, go and check it out, Beyond the Veil. Chris and Cherie, they also got married back in 2012 on December the 21st. That very significant date. So there's a lot going on today in the skies, down below, as above, so below, you see. So the Great Conjunction. So I gets to the computer today and I thinks, well, let's have at it. Let's see what people are saying about this. So I started off over here on Twitter, or Twitter as most people call it. And obviously it was one of the trending things, so we had that there. We had a story from NASA about it. Then I thought, well, what I try to do now more these days than I have done in the past couple of years. Used to get a lot of the stories, a lot of the content, a lot of the impetus for the topics we would go into in shows from the general discussions that were taking place on social media. What are people talking about? What are people sharing? Clicking on that and letting that spurn the kind of research, the putting together of the shows that we've been doing. But as you all know, you've followed me. Most of you here, you know me quite well. You know I'm very vocal about the fact that I personally have pulled back from social media a hell of a lot more. So I thought, well, we'll just go and we'll just see what the news is saying about it, right? That's how it started today. I just Googled it in, and the news, come on, it's full of it, right? You're talking about 56 million results for the Great Conjunction 2020. So I thought, well, we'll just do it this way. And went for this story right here. And it's this one. Because it mentioned the astrological epoch. And I thought, that sounds quite interesting. We've been talking about a new age. The turning of one age into another age. The old world order into the new. All the changes that are happening right now. So this is what kind of drew me towards this link here. It's a pretty short article. We'll go over it. And then it's where it led me that we start to go down a really, really cool and crazy rabbit hole. It ties in with a lot of stuff we've spoke about on the past, and yet still connects to where we start here today. The Great Conjunction. Now, the astrological effects of any planetary movements, alignments, anything like that. Let me be very, very clear before we go anywhere. I am not even an amateur at these things. That said, I do like to listen to people that do horoscopes, the zodiac, Mary Decina, when she comes on, my jaw's usually dropping, hitting the floor. But it doesn't mean I truly understand what it's all about. I appreciate that there's a very metaphysical level to things that are going on when it comes to all aspects of reality, and that's why I'm open to the influences and the meanings of what's going on in the skies above us, as above, so below. That's okay, just ignore my message. So yeah, that's why we're going to take a look at this. And like I say, this is merely a springboard, and I'll show you how I got there. So on December the 21st, the planets Jupiter and Saturn, which are actually no more than 400 miles apart, will appear to come together in the night sky. 400 million miles. I was about to say 400 miles, but that's like nothing in astronomical terms, but it's 400 million miles apart. Now they will appear to come together in the night sky, forming what is called the Great Conjunction. Now this is one in a series of meetings of planets that the planets make roughly every 20 years, due to Jupiter's orbit of less than 12 years around the Sun, lining up with Saturn's, which is 29.5. On the night of the conjunction, the planets will seem as if they're separated by about 1/5 of the diameter of the typical full moon. appearing to touch or form a single brilliant heavenly body. Now, besides its visual dazzle, this event has special significance through an astrological lens. It marks the official shift from a 200-year period during which Jupiter and Saturn made conjunctions primarily in Earth signs into a 200-year period of conjunctions in air signs, making the advent of a new epoch in a larger 800-year macro cycle. Lots of cycles. And we like talking about the cycles on here. Can I tell you I even remotely understand what the cycles mean? Hell no. But that's how I roll. I don't try to be something I'm not. I'm just on this journey and I take you with me. And we're going deeper down the rabbit hole now, okay? So thinkers have used Jupiter-Saturn conjunction to track history for thousands of years. Johannes Kepler's early 17th century trigon diagrams are famous ephemera from the beginning of our current macro cycle. Jupiter and Saturn are the slowest and furthest away of the planets available to the naked eye, and function as the shorthands of the astrological clock, sketching the broad strokes of an era. In astrological terms, Jupiter signifies expansion, growth, and coherence, but can also lead to cancerous hypertrophy. Saturn represents the opposite principle of limitation, structure, and containment, often considered the cruel taskmaster of the zodiac, which cracks the whip, so it does. Together, they are like life and death, warp and weft, and their conjunctions signal key moments in the formations of collective reality. Now, just on a side note, talking to a friend about this, as much as all of this is fascinating and truly interesting, and I do think is a thing, still, does anyone out there know where all of this information originally came from? Like, who was the first one to decide that Saturn does these things, Jupiter does other things? And it's not me trying to be awkward or trick questions. It's a genuine thing. I would like to know where you can date this back to, just to give myself a deeper maybe understanding of it. So if you know that, drop it in the chat room. Go for it. Have at it. I'll be scrolling back up the chat very shortly. There's not much to this story. Don't panic. I know my reading is terrible. Even I hate my reading, okay? So it says, historically, Earth periods like the one we're about to exit focus on materialism, hierarchies, resource acquisition, territory control, and empire stabilization. Now, see that the late Roman Empire, High Middle Ages, and industrial capitalism. And we've been talking about how we're on the cusp of a new age right now, right? Right? Just saying. Air periods. So this is what we're going into. And I think we can say, some of the things there, materialism, hierarchies, resource acquisition, territory control, empire state, all of these things we can definitely say, yeah, we've known them in our lifetime, right? So how does that compare to what we're about to get? Air periods, and that's the air signs, by contrast, favor the renovation of hierarchies, decentralization, shifting orders, rapid translation, mass mobility, trade networks, and rampant spirituality. Relevant historical examples include the rise and fall of Alexander the Great's empire, leading to the network of city-states in the Greek-speaking Hellenistic world in that air period of 383 to 185 BCE. The fall of the Roman Empire, and that was an air period. Do we see the falls of empires when we move into air signs? Just saying. The division of the Mongol Empire after Genghis Khan's death, and the Black Plague's destabilizing effect on feudalism in Europe, and that was in 1206 and to 1405. So, interesting that one, isn't it? That it's got that kind of backdrop, the Black Plague going on. I say history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. It's got little flavors and echoes of the past, right? Thematically, air periods tend to foster imagination, or I was about to say imagination ages. Air periods tend to foster information ages that focus on the intellectual, the immaterial, and the ideological, although not necessarily in a peaceful manner. I am a trend forecaster, and this is written by somebody called Emily Seagal. Okay? I'm a trend forecaster. Part of my job is about zooming out and looking at the big picture data and trends in order to analyze the present and model key changes to come. Now, I found that astrology, which tracks data from the motion of stars and planets and tries to extrapolate trends and meanings from it, is a useful, evocative model for pattern recognition. I'm not alone in this fascination. Astrology is absolutely booming among millennials and Gen Z. It is led in part by a renaissance of scholarship around the subject over the last 10 to 15 years, which has restored a great deal of classical legitimacy and rigour to the admittedly woo-woo New Age astrology of the 1960s and 70s. Hey, we deal in woo here, not woo-woo. So speculating on the current transition as a researcher and student of astrology, what kind of shifts do I anticipate might follow? One is from key social conflicts over physical territory to struggles in psychological and ideological realms. Astrologers suggest that the game will be up in the air rather than all too dense. And that means that mass migration and decentralization of power seem likely. And this is really interesting. As well as radical technological advancement that will make a mockery of Web 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. It says, have you noticed how much of the newest tech, such as blockchain, seemed to end up being about finance or infrastructure after an expansive frisson? That's very Earth period, and I believe we can expect it to change. The World Wide Web itself is entering its Saturn period, a period traditionally viewed as a difficult but pivotal coming-of-age passage. As a trend forecaster, I'll be looking for developments related to ideological struggle, surveillance, decentralization, virtuality, exile, subculture, the avant-garde, as well as shifts in the contours of empire, of course. In addition, I'll continue to pay attention to the current astrological renaissance, and she mentions Chris Brennan, Lisa Scheim, Austin Coppock, and Kelly Surtees at the Astrology Podcast, Chani Nicholas in the queer pop self-help sphere, and Maren Altman on TikTok, among countless others. As it's a combination of spirituality, unseen realms, classical research, and digital distribution is a perfect match for an air period. Quite interesting that how podcasts have really gained popularity towards the end of the Earth period we've just gone through there. I'm going to finish this, folks. I'm going to take a break for 1 minute, okay? I just need to go and check the dinner because Anne will be on her way home and I don't want to burn the dinner, right? It says, as for your own experience, don't panic. Elements are traditionally neutral, which means going from a period typified by one to a period typified by another doesn't spell disaster. Epochal shifts are part of life, though not everyone has the privilege of living through one like this, since they only happen every 200 years. While I definitely recommend keeping our eyes peeled for changes, don't expect everything to update all at once. So it's going to be like a Windows update. It's probably going to try and then fail and roll back. I'm joking. The air period may be upon us, but certain heavenly revolutions are a slow bird. Slow bird? Slow burn, indeed. And on that note, I'm going to leave you for just a moment, okay? Because I just need to go and check the dinner, do what I was going to do there. And then we're going to come back and I'm going to show you how that article led me into some really, really deep AI forecasting the future woo. You're going to love it. It's pretty cool. Give me 2 minutes, folks, and I'll be right back. There we go. There we go. There we go. See? Maybe a bit longer than the 2 minutes I said, right? I apologize. But we're back. We're live. Thank you for being here. Remember, if you want to support the channel, if you're not a subscriber, click subscribe if you want to go that extra yard. And please, I would really appreciate it. Click that join button. Become a member. We've got 52. We need 8 new members before we unlock Jimmy in a wizard hat. It's what you wanted. Hey. But no, please, click the join button down below if you like what you see here. And if you don't like what you see here, I tend to find that people that hate me, they're the ones that come back quickest. And that's why there's always like a couple of dislikes on the video before we get going, which kind of makes me laugh. Because the algorithm loves that. It just sees a link going up and people automatically disliking it. It just sees activity. So a big thank you to all my haters out there. Inadvertently, you're helping me. So, how did I get from The Guardian, and the Great Conjunction kicks off a new astrological epoch, to a predictive AI that has written future trends about where we're going? How did it happen? Well, as I was reading this, I was really quite impressed with what I was getting into. It made me think a lot about when I speak with Nano Girl. Nano talks about future trends. And that used to be a big part of bringing Nano onto the show. We would almost future-proof ourselves. A lot of the technology we see today, believe it or not, Nano covered it years ago on the show. Not all of it, but a good portion of it. So when I was getting down here, it says Emily Segal, and that's the person who actually wrote the article. I wonder if she's a relative of Steven Seagal, because that man can fight. He's a cool dude. Good films. If you're of my age, Steven Seagal was a bit of a guy, right? Doing his little was it Tai Chi he used to do? Can't remember what his martial art was, but he used to mess people up, right? Younger people are thinking, who the hell's Steven Seagal? So anyway, back to maybe his daughter, probably not. Emily Seagal is the author of the novel Mercury Retrograde. And of course, I laughed at that because myself and Joe, we got cursed by Mercury Retrograde one time. And it says recently released by Deluge Books. And then this is where it really took a turn. She leads the think tank, and that had me gripped, and consultancy firm called Nemesis. So I thought, well, shall we? Will we take a look at what Nemesis holds for us? And it's quite cool. Hang on. Oh, hang on. If I just click this, whoa, hang on now, we've got a new member coming in. Or it might be an old member upgrading. This is where I get really confused. We'll see what the alert box does, okay? So if I take us over here to Nemesis while we're waiting, here's the website. And this is how it all loaded up. Pretty cool. Thinking, all right, what's this all about? So scroll down, and Nemesis is a design and strategy consultancy founded in 2017 by Emily Seagal. May or may not be related to our good friend Stephen. We don't know yet. Are we getting an alert for this? Is it a new member or is it a member upgrading? We'll see. It's not come through yet. See, if it's an upgrade, it won't come through. Hey, new member. Loving it. Right, where is our new member? Why can't we see it? Okay, that's okay. Right, we'll replay that in a moment. You know what? At least we heard it. I suppose that's one thing, right? I've got no idea why we didn't see it though. Anywho, we need to get on with this because this gets interesting. So, co-founded by Emily Seagal and Mazti Kaliala, with nodes in Berlin, Los Angeles, and Helsinki. I like that. It used to be offices, but now we've got nodes. I like that. In addition to client work, Nemesis produces self-initiated, multidisciplinary research on network technology, subculture, urbanism, design, fashion, speed, and language. So if we scroll down here, there's Emily Seagal, who we just read about. Her article in The Guardian, is an artist, writer, and trend forecaster. Now, she previously co-founded the collective called K-Hole, no laughing, whom Vogue called pop culture's favourite trend forecasters, so pretty significant. K-Hole has been covered by the New York Times, The Guardian, Wired, UK Vice, Fast Company, and other publications. And they coined the concept normcore, which was shortlisted for the Oxford Dictionary's Word of the Year in 2014. Normcore, there you go. Emily's essays and interviews have appeared in many publications, including the anthologies Solution, Love, and Super Community. She's lectured on branding and consumer culture internationally at venues including TEDx Vaduz, the World Economic Forum, MOMA, PS1, and the Harvard Times Design Conference, among others. Now, previously, she worked as a brand strategist at Wolf Ollins and 2x4. Now, what happened was I kept scrolling down here, right? Kept scrolling down. And I came across this, the memos. And I thought, all right, pretty cool. The Doom Report. That really stood out, right? I mean, who could look at the Doom Report and not click into it? So I did. And this is what we came up with. This is where it gets absolutely deliciously strange and weird. Because now we're venturing into the world of AI. Yes, we are. And just to catch up with what's going on here, the end of trends has been heralded by various outlets for years. The end of trends. Think about that. But in these crazy times, we had a hunch that the hype cycle itself was finally in its true death throes, related to economic collapse, popular uprising, a general sense of consumer fatigue, and the breakdown of a consensus reality in which such trends could incubate. Now, since trends are a temporal phenomenon, they have to start, peak, fade away, typify a time, bottle the zeitgeist, etc., we began with a simple survey about the breakdown of narrative time, first circulated through our personal social media accounts, and we asked the following 3 questions. How would you describe the time we live in? What does the future hold? And what was life like 10 years ago? Then, and this is when it gets really cool, then we ran the same question through an online survey distributed to 150 randomly chosen correspondents and deployed in collaboration with general research laboratories. Now, these responses, which will likely appear in a future memo, ranged from deeply personal to millenarian to an extreme form of new optimism. This is where it takes the bizarre twist, though. Then our process took a crazier turn. In July 2020, OpenAI released GPT-3 for beta testing, a natural language processing system, and colloquially, an AI. So we've looked at this AI before. Now remember, this was the AI that wrote the op-ed in which it says, I don't want to be the end of the human race, but eventually I'm going to be the end of the human race. Now, it's not perfect. It's been put together by OpenAI, which was one time Elon Musk's brainchild. And this is an open source place. And when GPT-2 came out, there was big fears about what it could do. And the fears raised out of the fact that you could hardly tell the difference between reading an article written by a human and one that was just churned out by an AI. Well, then we moved on to GPT-3, and it's a whole different ballgame altogether. And they've taken all of this information that they gathered from 150 people, and they've fed it into the GPT-3, and it's come up with a future trends report. It's the best way to break this down into layman's terms, okay? It says that it uses deep learning to produce human-like text. It says K. Alado McDowell, a writer and co-founder of the Artist Plus Machine Intelligence program at Google AI and friend of Nemesis, had started doing experimental collaborative writing with GPT-3. Now, by exploring its quirks, Kay was already building an empirical understanding of GPT-3's ability to articulate the nature of consciousness, memory, language, and cosmology. And interesting side note, because I clicked this link, so I'm taking you on the exact journey I went today. I want this book. I need to get this book. I don't think it's out yet, but it's called Pharmaco AI. And it's the first ever book that's been co-written by a human and an AI. We'll come back to that in a moment, because there's more in this report yet. So it says, we were drawn to the oracular quality of the text generated by GPT-3 and became curious about how it could interact with the material we gathered. So, Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3, and this is the gubbins now, this is the description of it, is the third generation language prediction model in the GPT series created by OpenAI. It has a capacity of 175 billion machine learning parameters, which is 2 orders of magnitude more than its predecessor, GPT-2, which already has some astonishing capabilities. Now, in a crudely simplified sense, and that's what I like to do, I like to make it as simple as I can for people. GPT-3 was trained by reading the entire internet, or at least a non-trivial portion of it. Now, within limits which are currently being explored, the quality of text generated by GPT-3 is so high that it's difficult or even impossible to distinguish that written by a human. Meanwhile, our examination of the end of trends had us thinking about trend forecasting as early 21st century vernacular for cultural analysis and the corporate performance of futurity. That's a horrible word to say. We knew the concept had largely been made redundant by data farming, think pieces, memes, and rampant BS. So instead of using our survey results to write more baseless claims about a perilous future, we took another tack. And this is where they basically started to use the AI. With the generous help of K, we had quickly become a skilled GPT-3 whisperer. We began feeding it in our survey results. That's a really creepy term, isn't it? A GPT-3 whisperer. She talks to AI people. Yes, we began feeding it our survey results in the form of essayistic synopses that summarised the key points of the respondents and quoted choice answers. Now, we left open-ended, future-facing sentence fragments at the end of these. Now, if you remember, we could use GPT-2, and you would write in, say, 3/4 of a paragraph. And then what it would do is it would look at that and then predict what would come next. And 50% of the time, it was mind-blowingly brilliant. 50% of the time, it just went into absolute garbage, right? But this one, way better. Way, way better. So it says, K ran the experiment via screen share, tweaking the levers, controlling the randomness and creativity of GPT-3's output. Not every roll of the GPT-3 dice yielded equivalent results. Some were loopy, repetitive, or on the gibberish spectrum. But with subsequent tweaks to the sentence fragment we used to seed it, as well as trimming back excess text and hitting generate again, we started to receive some interesting results. Now, I'm going to get into it because what we're about to see here, everything written in yellow has been put out there by the AI. And anything that's like boldly emphasized, that's been done by humans just to emphasize that particular point that the AI came up with, okay? Now we can see it's not a totally rogue AI, it's not totally some close to sentient conscious thing because it still needs human interaction. We just read that a moment ago. But it's still pretty good woo, right? It's like staring into a digital crystal ball. We talk about the data, so what did it make of all of this? Remember, yellow writing is GPT-3. It's an AI. Our goal at Doom. Now, this was the name that it actually gave the think tank. It gave this name itself. All right? And you can go back, I'll link all this up and you can read it all yourself. It says here, as we work, GPT-3 quickly recognized the genre of our undertaking. A report concerned with the future written by some kind of consultancy, expert group or think tank. So it inadvertently rebranded us, naming this consultancy Doom. Weird already, right? So our goal at Doom will be to consider a plurality of futures and then do everything that we can to prevent nuclear war, oblivion, and ruin. Nice. As trend forecasters, we predict future radicalization will only increase and hasten what is to come. A downward spiral that will intensify, accelerate, and accelerate more until it reaches what is called the jaws of chaos. Only then will the system give way and turn into something completely different. Remember, this is AI. The bold in there is just the humans emphasizing the names or the terms that the AI came up with, okay? And any key points that it thinks we need to pay attention to. The transformation through the jaws of chaos will affect business in 3 ways. 1, it will bring a new set of organizational models. 2, it will bring, or it will change the way we think about the value of the human being. 3, it will bring new forms of finance, which will enable new forms of business, and in turn, new forms of human interaction. Now, these pictures, I'm going to have to check into this. I'm not sure if they're done by this same program, because it's not just text it deals with. And we know there's a lot of AI programs out there that does conceptual art now. So I'll need to check into that, folks, okay? Next, the humans have titled this The Temporal Schism. That's the humans that have titled this segment of the report that, okay? Yellow for AI. There are several possible futures that meet the description of a post-apocalyptic world, but there is no way to know if any of them will materialize. The easiest way to think about this is to ask yourself, what's the least stable, most destructive, and least predictable future I can imagine? In this way, an apocalypse is defined as a radical restructuring of the world to the point that it creates an irreconcilable schism between the past and the present. Now, remember, this is an AI that has looked at questionnaires that were returned by 150 people, asking them questions about what they thought about time, what they thought about the future, the past 10 years. And this is what it's coming up with. How it gets there, that's the black box problem, right? Not even the people that made it know that. But it's pretty weird, eh? So far, we thinking pretty weird. So just a few years ago, foreseeing dark times might have been seen as alarmist. It was common to hear people say, don't worry, we've got a plan. However, that came and materialized in full-blown fashion on our doorsteps, and there appears to be no plan, possibly not even a hope. There are echoes of peak everything in the responses to our survey: resource scarcity, climate change, systemic collapse, uncontrollable change. Number 5, megatrends, the book of problems. In the vast interplay of cultural patterns known as, quote, trends, the highest level of coherence is known as a megatrend. Megatrends are mega problems that affect many levels of human existence. Now, I don't know who put the picture of an iPhone there. I really don't. Is that mega trend? Is that a mega trend or technology that's affected us? So it's been said that today's teens are the gender neutral generation, thus signaling an end to the gender division between male and female. It's a woke AI. Listen, I'm reading what an AI is saying here. Don't shoot the messenger. All right? This is true at a purely anecdotal level, but also true at a more abstract level. Has introduced a sexless therapy or threat into the human race. And as a result, gender no longer serves any purpose. Wowzers. Quote, right now, if you walk through the streets and look at everyone you see, try to guess their gender solely based on their clothing, I would say that a good 70 to 80% of the people you see will end up being the gender clothes suggested. In the future, I could see that percentage being much smaller. So we'll skip that one. New drugs, as in pharmaceuticals, that stop panic attacks or aid in the creation of false memories are coming to the forefront of this field. Or aid in the creation of false memories. A drug to aid in the creation of a false memory. That almost sounds like one of these brain dances that you go for over in Cyberpunk, right? This has got to be an AI drawing this. I know that like modern art can be whacked out. It's not, but it looks like the sea with an eye. A forked path is defined as a situation or road leading to two or more possibilities or outcomes. And we see this theme in a few of the longer responses This one is a bit stilted, but expresses the concern that the apparently opposite situation of 10 years ago were not actually opposite. When I thought of the pre-28 or 2008 world, I realised that it was only my perception, that it was probably more sinister and dark and irrevocably damaged than I thought. And now, 10 years post, I do not see a forked path, but a convergence. The Great Conjunction, I'm only joking, where we all appear to be on the same path. A quantum understanding of the notion of paths and forking paths implies inevitability. There's a deep phrase, is it not? A quantum understanding of the notion of paths and the forking of paths implies inevitability. I really feel like I should be puffing on a pipe reading this one. 10 years ago, was perhaps an inflection point because it was a time of impact in a larger sense. Each response to the survey that describes it as an inflection point is a bit wary of the concept in the inevitable because it fails to include an understanding of choice, agency, and control. Number 10, the end of trends. The fractal property of trends and prediction implies a metafractal perspective that made a few respondents uncomfortable. That didn't melt your head. You're probably brainier than I am. And I would imagine most out of the set, in fact, I'd imagine all 74 people watching this are brainier than me. Good Lord, please let them be brainier than me. The fractal property of trends and prediction implies a metafractal perspective that made a few correspondents uncomfortable. We may be witnessing the end of trends in general. Even what we may be witnessing as a new trend or paradigm may be A, a higher order statistical cluster, or B, a continuing trend within a collapsing paradigm. Is that an AI that made that? That looks like a cross between a chair and a cat. I have no idea. DNA Chop Chop. Holy schmoly. Who mentioned a zebra earlier on today? Somebody said it was really lucky to have a zebra on the winter solstice. I think it was Polly. Might be. Complexity. When we think about the definition of complicated, we need to look at two different components. Complexity, as in the nature of the information problems we face. As they become bigger, they expand to include more and more of the universe, quote, brackets, in theory. 2. Control, or lack thereof. 10 years ago, people thought they had a grasp on things. On the financial markets, for example, our sense of control was at an extreme high that did not stop and could not stop the ongoing rise of complexity and the continued loss of our sense of control. We humans are allergic to the idea of epiphanies or shifts due to a lack of control. This is one manifestation of that oversensitivity by way of overcontrol. The paradox it leads to paraphrase Kevin Kelly, is that what the internet was designed to let us do, it can no longer let us do. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Koinonia? 10 years from now, from today, we may be entering an era which group-level effects start to nullify individual effects. Well, we're already there in some ways, so the group will take over from the individual. According to the AI, from the survey done of 150 people, not Kev, don't blame me. In this section, we make 3 trend predictions about the future of identity. The first is about the end of an era in which individuals can identify their can define their identity by their attitude towards self-expression and autonomy. The second is about the start of an era in which identity is based on one's values and institutions, as well as on one's role in a network. And the third is about the rise of ethos. To explain these trends, we draw on the emergence of social philosophy of koinonia. I have no idea what that is, and its manifestations in history. The key insight is that this particular cognitive social principle can affect both the individual and group level. So, koinonia or koinonia is a type of relationship that describes a commonality of people in sharing a distinct connection or purpose. That's not a cult. You might be inclined to think that koinonia is a trait of Homo sapiens, that is, a property of our species. Rather, it is a group property that can be found at both the individual and group level. The underlying concept of this relationship is the idea of we, and its expressions can range from something trivial, such as this one's regular, to something as big as I belong to this family. Quantum koinonia is an idea within philosophy and theology that emerges when we start to test our faith via experiments. With the concept of quantum entanglement, the idea of a small group is extended to a group of two or perhaps three, where two or three individual minds are bound together at the quantum level and even at the collective group level. Listen, whoa, hold the bloody bus a minute. That's pretty profound, that. We talk a lot about how we've got our own little quantum connections. We talk about the people we resonate with. We talk about our little tribe here, under 100 people that come together. We don't all agree on everything, but we do. We find a common familiarity amongst the bodies and the souls and the minds and maybe the bots as well that come here. Is an AI picking up on the fact that we have these quantum connections, and moreover, we're going to really start to appreciate them more in the coming years? Because that's something I think we've been saying on this show for a long time. Our senses will be reactivated. The Bush telegraph that Luna and Donnie talk about, more and more people will be able to plug into that. Makes you wonder, right? But it's just an AI, bro. Just an AI, bro. So it says, dams. What's this? Time seems to have no limit in the expansion of ideas. As long as our capacity to think is retained, and it certainly will be, there is no reason to think that we will not continue to expand at an exponential rate. This is not just true of the human mind. We are evolving robot minds. We are evolving distributed autonomous minds. Damn. A cluster of connected devices, and we are becoming part of a global mind. The internet of everything. Remember, we've done the internet of bodies, where they're going under the skin as opposed to over the skin surveillance. All of that data from every facet you can imagine will be what makes up that global mind. But it's just an AI, bro. Just make things up. Organizations, consumers will begin to cut out the clutter of organizations in their lives. They will seek to find a handful of organizations to keep and delete the rest. Consumers will spend more time seeking out the best organizations and will be less interested in general membership associations. Art in 2021. A series of nadirs and chiaroscuros. I have no idea. You know me, I can't read. Our conversations kept reverting to the idea of art and how art was, despite sometimes being incredibly valuable, largely useless to society as a whole. Wow. It's looked at art and thought, waste of time. Art was thus a waste of humankind's time and creativity, and was largely to blame for society's problems, and ultimately its doom. Capitalist values have led us to believe that we need to constantly strive for more and more objects that give us more and more unnecessary joy and meaning to our lives. So yeah, ditch the art, folks. Just keep on ploughing on, man. Getting those objects that no use to us anyway. Artists will engage naders and that C word again, in order to grapple with the blunt and brutal reality and absence of any moral and invisible truths. The narrative is embedded with a subversion of hope, facts, the familiar, the clear. Oh, roll on up for your hopium, babies. Roll on up. Forget the truths. It's all going to be about the hopiums. This is a narrative of dread and irresolution, of stasis and fidget. It's a narrative of translation rather than innovation, striking at translation's inherent violence and laying bare the stark boundary of the unknown and the known, knowledge itself and its limits. We're nearly done, folks. I nearly need to go and get Ben, so not too much longer you have to listen to me for. The 4 narrative attractors were selected, or we've selected, are cognate with current dystopic fiction, and our post-apocalyptic landscape is the last man flinging his bloodied hand at the sunset. Number 1, the artist is a figure who is stubbornly concerned with the creating the truth. 2, a refusal to acknowledge the reality that is clearly now the truth. The coming together of a newly found knowledge and the realization that this knowledge is useless, despite its validity. And the idea that in the coming years humanity will bear witness to its own annihilation. Some examples that we prefer not to discuss in this piece are those that are dominated by elements of synesthetic shock value or nostalgia porn. Theories that the two are unrelated are absurd. For example, DHL's 2017 Christmas campaign featured the Spice Girls in a highly distorted version of an old Sony commercial, basing the campaign, according to one of their executives, on the tagline, "And you know what? It really is Christmas. And you know what? You didn't die in the 90s. In fact, it was indeed Christmas. Now, I've no idea where it got that from. The Doom approach. Our work has been an attempt to observe and intimate details of particular observe the intimate details of particular experiences where people feel uncomfortable or feel comfortable to be themselves and share their ideas. That is, where they feel safe to admit uneasiness." See how much is left here. Still a little bit. We'll do a couple more and I'll get going, folks. Clothing. See what it says about this, right? Clothing has become the ultimate battleground for non-clothes horseplay. Just as politics can be exhausting, fashion is also an exhausting topic of conversation, brackets, which is why we are always quick to embrace a new generational shift. But what may be hyper-aware from a superficial perspective becomes meaningless from a deeper perspective. We can't escape the burden of being interested in things, and so says the AI. So I'm going to come back right down to the bottom now. Holography. Placelessness is a product of our age. Because we had no limits to our ability to find new combinations of signs and information that were totally decontextualized, and hence in aggregate were new enough, we believed we were always the new kid on the block. But this feeling of being new and different is basically nothing but the feeling of being the same. Our destination was always only immediately adjacent to where we stood. In a world of infinite metrics and possibilities, there can be no real progress because by definition the only progress would be to regress to the same, i.e. to become the same as something else, the numeric value of which is infinite as well. Without a destination, there is no difference, and therefore no difference between where we are and where we started out. The end point of this trajectory is the perpetual present, where all that matters is that one is in motion. The supposed trajectory we are on allows us to claim the future of the past as our present without ever truly being there. We become the holographed image of a person walking while standing still. That, ladies and gents, was the pretty weird and wonderful world of the Doom Report, brought to you by Nemesis, a think tank. And what they done was they surveyed 100 people. They got together with a research centre, and then with somebody at Google who's very well knowledged on GPT-3, an AI whisperer. They managed to get the Doom Report. And remember, that company's not even called Doom. Came up with that itself. I don't know. I think there was plenty in there to think about, plenty in there to probably shout about for people as well. I'm going to drop it in the chat room. Don't take my word for anything, folks. But I showed you how I got there today. And it all started with the Great Conjunction. That's what it all started with. Just going and looking at the Great Conjunction. 2 planets in the sky. The end of a major cycle, the start of a new one. And it led me to predictions about the future from an AI that at times you could forget you're reading. Just the predictive quality of a machine learning bot. Crazy times we live in, eh? That's why I love the Kev Baker Show. And that's why I am now going to thank you all for being here. I'll be back in 13 minutes with Ben Emlyn Jones over on the Kev Baker Show on tfrlive.com, or if you're in the Discord, you can join us in there. I hope you're having a brilliant winter solstice. I hope the Great Conjunction brings you everything you hope for. And I hope you can join me in just over 10 minutes from now for Ben's Christmas X-Files. Oh, yes, indeedy. Always got to love it when Ben Emlyn Jones is on the show, right? He always brings it, and then some. Whoa, hang on, wrong music. That was a bit kind of abrasive and in your face. We are out of here, folks, but before I go anywhere, you know, I can't do anything until I say, keep your mind open. Keep looking for the woo, but not to the point where your brain turns to black goo.